Hi, I'm Caden, here with my brother,
Cal,
and you're watching Eating W's.
eat the W.
That's a W. Let's eat one. Let's eat one. That's a W.
On today's episode of Eating W's, we have the first official week of NFL football in the books. Not official regular season week, but our first week of overall football. It was a great week of preseason ball. They're not the most star-studded games, but they're still fun to watch. You get to see some guys playing for their lives pretty much, and you get to see some real live action NFL football. So can't complain too much at all. For today's episode, we're going to talk about our three biggest winners from week one of the NFL preseason. But before we jump into that, just a couple quick signings. Starting off with the Browns signing former Bronco and then Seahawk Shelby Harris, who was, of course, part of that huge Russell Wilson trade a couple years ago, or just last year even. Yeah. And then also Ronnie Harrison signs with the Colts. The former Browns safety has a new home in Indianapolis. And then a couple of big ones here, starting with Dalvin Cook signing with none other than the New York Jets on a one-year, $8.6 million deal. It's only about not even quite $3 million less than Saquon Barkley. Pretty close for what I'm not going to say is a huge gap in skill, but definitely a gap that you notice. And then it's really funny because Dalvin Cook and Aaron Rodgers are now together after so many years of going head-to-head.
Former rivals are now teammates, and that'll be a huge boost for that running back room in New York, who now will team up with Dalvin Cook, will team up with Breece Hall and Michael Carter to form quite the trio there in New York.
Yeah, they had some injury problems last year, but now, hell, even if they have injury problems, when you're going that deep at running back, you can almost just brush them off at that point.
Yeah.
And then another big running back signing here, Ezekiel Elliott finally finds a new home in New England, signing with the Patriots on a one-year deal worth a base $3 million, but it also includes a $1 million signing bonus and up to another $2 million in incentives. So two running backs there that were on the market for a long time now get knocked out bang bang. Deals are going down left and right. The only big name really left on that running back market now remains to be Kareem Hunt, who has had a couple of visits recently, but no official signings. But as for Zeke, I think this is a really good pickup for the Patriots. They had a power back last year in Damian Harris, but he leaves. He goes to Buffalo, if I'm not mistaken now.
Yes, he did.
So they find a way to replace him a little bit and get a little washed up, but still not too far out of his prime, Ezekiel Elliott.
No, he's only been in the league for 7 years, which it doesn't seem like that long, but that's a long time for a running back.
Definitely. Yeah, the running backs are truly a dime a dozen. It's hard to,
unfortunately,
it's hard to see for them because it's a dangerous, tough position.
They just get so banged up so quickly. It's they don't last very long, even with the talent that they have.
So now we will keep rolling on and go to our three biggest winners from preseason week one.
Yep, and I'm going to start with the Green Bay Packers, and not only just Jordan Love and his performance, but the Green Bay Packers quarterbacks in general. And I think that's part of the Matt LaFleur offense, which we're really going to see how good Matt LaFleur is now that he doesn't have Rodgers by his side to help him, along the way with the play calling. It's going to be all LaFleur and probably a little bit of Jordan Love, but the way that the quarterbacks played just really impressed me. Sean Clifford, who was the backup quarterback and kind of the biggest question mark coming in because he's a rookie and he's just as old as Jordan Love, and they drafted him in the 5th round, not expecting much from him, but he had a 20 for 26 passing line for over 200 yards and a touchdown, and he just went out there and he was slinging it all over. He had big games. These weren't just little dink and dunk passes. He had big chunk yardage gains and big throws to Samari Torrey and our other wide receivers like Romeo Doubs and Malik Heath, and who played very well also in this preseason game.
Yeah, that's impressive to see for a rookie. Even if it is preseason, it is still live action, full speed NFL football. So he might be facing twos, but he's a two in his own right. So the fact that he can go out there and perform well is really nice to see for a rookie.
He just needed to go out there and show that if the Packers needed him to, he can at least keep them afloat. And I think he's proven that he at least belongs in the conversation of NFL backup quarterback.
Good for him. A Big Ten quarterback. You gotta
Big
love
Ten
them.
quarterback.
See them
Yep,
survive.
Penn State.
So my first spotlight here is going to be on a team and a coach, and that is Jonathan Gannon and the Arizona Cardinals beating the Denver Broncos, even though the Broncos played their ones for almost the entirety of the first quarter. I know Russell Wilson and Jerry Jeudy at the very least played for almost the entirety of the first quarter. And that's really impressive because they only held them to 1 touchdown in that first quarter with all their starters playing, because the Arizona Cardinals defense was a big question mark. They did lose DeAndre Hopkins, but their offense is still pretty good. I mean, at least decent, but they had a huge question mark at defense after losing countless guys in the offseason. And they were able to go out and play as a unit really well with new defensive-minded head coach Jonathan Gannon. So good for them to kind of get a nice confidence boost before the season starts.
Yeah, even though it was a preseason game, it was surprising to see the Cardinals win that game, because preseason comes down a lot of times to coaching and how well you can coach those younger guys and those less talented guys that are the 3s and the 4s and practice squad guys that are getting their shot to play. Seeing how well that they really perform out there is usually due to coaching. And Sean Payton is supposed to be this kind of savior in Denver, and he got out-coached by a rookie head coach in the preseason. It doesn't look well there in Denver still.
Not for him at all.
Oh, and on to the second one. Yep, for me, for the Packers. I had, on the other side of the ball, I had one spotlight on a player, Carrington Valentine, our 7th round draft pick this year out of Kentucky. Now, he played most of the game, but he had an interception and a few pass breakups during this game that were really big plays, and he showed that he is proven that he might be a guy, and he has played very well this training camp, including lining up against Jamar Chase in the one-on-ones and holding him to just a few catches and no touchdowns in the one-on-one scrimmages that they had with the joint practices with the Bengals.
That's pretty damn good, and there's a lot of uncertainty in that secondary, especially at the safety position for Green Bay. So all he has to do is just show a couple of flashes, and he will be golden going into the season.
He's already proved to be our cornerback 4, and possibly could be playing if Eric Stokes doesn't get activated in time for the season to start.
Good for him. And then my number 2, Callan already talked about one NFC North quarterback, and I'm going to talk about another. My spotlight is on Justin Fields, who had the most impressive stat line with far and away the least amount of work put into it. Now listen to this stat line. He only played 2 drives, and he went 3 for 3 with 2 touchdowns and 129 yards, which is just an insane stat line for 2 drives. But the craziest part about it is he had under 10 air yards when it came to passing, which is how far the ball was in the air. Starting off with a negative 2-yard pass that went for a 60-plus yard touchdown to DJ Moore on a screen, and then a 1 air yard pass that went to the running back, Khalil Herbert, on a out route that he ended up taking to the house for about a 50 or 60 yard touchdown. So it's just hilarious to see that, because his other pass wasn't anything special. It was a completion, but a perfect QBR on 3 passes for Justin Fields with not much work put into it.
No, there's not a lot of work put in that. You can't get a lot of tape off of that from him. And that's really a big breakdown by the defense and the defensive scheme for Tennessee to allow not only 1 but 2 big plays like that on such small developing plays. They're supposed to just get a few yards, compared to the huge chunk yards. So that's kind of worrisome for Tennessee in my eyes, that they had allowed those 2 big plays, and they may not allow too many of those in the regular season, or they won't be winning many games.
Yeah, you better get it together there, Vrabel. You're supposed to be the defensive guy. So now, someone who we should definitely point out as a whole team is the Baltimore Ravens winning their game and winning their 24th straight preseason game, which is just insanity. Big shout out to John Harbaugh there, because as Cal mentioned earlier, preseason has a lot to do with coaching. So the fact that he's on a 5, 6, 7 year streak of never losing a preseason game is absolute insanity. But Cal and I each had one player that we wanted to point out from the Baltimore Ravens, and I'll let him take it first.
The first player I want to give a shout out to is Josh Johnson, who is a quarterback from the 2008 draft class, who is still out there playing at 37 years old. He's the second oldest quarterback in the league now, behind Aaron Rodgers. And he's out there starting preseason games. I just think that's just awesome because that's somebody who just loves to play the game. He obviously doesn't have a whole lot of quarterback talent. He's more of a runner than he is a thrower, which fits perfectly for that Baltimore offense in case Lamar Jackson gets hurt again. So he might fit perfectly in that place in Baltimore. But he's been on 14 different NFL teams, including a few different stops at semi-pro leagues. He's just a guy out there having fun, enjoying it, you know. He loves the game and he loves to play it no matter where it is or when it is.
Put me anywhere and I'll play. Those are the best types of guys. And he even beat out Tyler Huntley, assumingly, for the backup.
Yeah, Tyler
role,
Huntley played the second half.
So really good on his part, and good to see him still doing it at that age.
Mm-hmm.
The player I wanted to point out as a little more notoriety even in the regular season, but Justin Tucker, the place kicker, legendary place kicker for the Baltimore Ravens, proves how dominant he is even in the preseason, putting in field goals from 46 yards out and 60 yards out, plus going 2 for 2 on extra points. And the Ravens only won this game by 1 point. So those 2 extra points and especially those 2 field goals really came in handy. So big shout out to Justin Tucker, just dominating no matter how important the games are.
Yep, those extra points make a difference. And in the preseason, you get a little bit of luck because the Eagles went for 2 and missed. And that likely wouldn't have happened in the regular season.
No.
They probably would have went for the tie, went for the kick. They got Jake Elliott. You know, they're good on kicking, just as the Ravens are. And Justin Tucker showed that he's in mid-season form with a 60-yarder that I saw it. It was directly down the middle.
It was beautiful.
I mean, you center cut that. I mean, it was unbelievable. He's ready to go.
He is just absolute insanity. It is mind-blowing how good he is. So that was Cal and I's biggest winners from week 1 of the preseason. Just looking into the future a little bit, the next 2 weeks of the preseason, both weeks 2 and 3, we're going to do pretty much the same thing. We thought about doing some losers, but there's never really losers in the preseason, but there are definitely some winners, so we wanted to point out those guys who had good weeks. And then on the gap week in between preseason week 3 and regular season week 1, we are going to tell you about some fantasy sleepers that you should be picking up once everyone's draft is all said and done. Cal and I are in a league together, maybe even 2, so we don't want to give each other our favorite players to draft.
No.
Just post-draft, we'll talk about the players we want. So make sure to stay tuned in here to Eating W's because we got great weeks planning, of course, leading into the NFL regular season. But until then, don't forget
to eat the W.